videos. In this video, we're going to go through API Explorer collections feature, as well as how to save API requests, how to recall them, and how to create API versions and additional things. If you notice that when you open API Explorer, so we have this particular space, in a tree that is shown on the left side of the page. So this is the collection API collection area. So when you create an API and then you save that API, it will get represented as shown here. By default, so there is not going to be any custom API. So let's go and clear that just to show what it looks like when you load for the first time. So it will just have this Brobench root item. And if you expand that, you will see there is a Salesforce Platform APIs and all the platform APIs from Salesforce. The Postman collections are included here. You can explore any one of them, and then you can use that as a template for you to make further changes. You can search for this collection. For example, let's say if you search for yes object and see that it shows all the elements starting with this object, and you can see that I have this S object collections retrieve. So if you click on it, we'll open that particular request here. Okay. So it's a pretty much the same request tab, that you would come across. Just the name has been pre-filled based on that, and then it shows this overview tab with the details or documentation of that particular API. So these documentations come from the collection that Salesforce team has maintained. Kudos to the team for maintaining this beautiful collection with all the information. It's a great help for a lot of Salesforce integrators to quickly understand what APIs are there. Browsing through the Salesforce documentation site is not that great, to be honest. So this is a great way to explore via the collections. And it shows all the documentation. You can see that it is a get, it has some path, some descriptions. It shows what the query parameters are there. And if the collection item includes any of the response templates, what response could look like, they will be shown as well. Okay, so these are like a template information for it to understand what possible ways the response could look like. You can go make changes to these and then run them. For example, let's say we wanna retrieve some fields here. We can go and get a couple of IDs. Let's say that we wanna fetch a couple of contact records. I'm gonna go to this object explorer, go to the contact object, go to the data tab so you don't have to query and quickly see the details, and copy these two IDs. Go back to the API Explorer and change the SObject API name to contact. Okay, so specify the IDs as a comma separated list of values, and then specify the fields. Let's say I want to get the first name. So I can enter. Okay, so it should services composite as object. So the contacts is not a valid subject. So that's a contact. So if you go change it, if you go run that again, so I would see this particular response here. So it's 200K. It was successful response. It included the JSON that includes IDs as well as the field that we requested. Okay. I can go and explore more standard APIs from the collection. Let's go close this and open maybe the update. And you can see that it includes the standard some um, template request. It has some documentation, how the body could look like, and some description. And you can go ahead and send this request, and it would execute it. Okay. Notice that because it's a standard API, the API doesn't get saved when you make any changes. But we had made a change to this particular API, and then we closed the tab, and then we came back and noticed that it reverted to whatever that the standard API that it was. Okay, so you can go ahead and save these APIs. So you can save from the standard API, or you can also save from the scratch API. So let's say I want to save this API. I can go ahead and click on the save. So it will bring up that particular name. So let's say this is list the APIs. So this lists all the APIs for that particular version. And then let's say I want to store this in custom in a folder. And the folder structure, the convention that we use is that you can specify a folder as a one single string. However, you can demarcate with a slash to indicate different folder segments. Let's say I want to store this under S object here, okay, and then read only APIs, whatever, or maybe just a general read APIs, okay, because I just get the data without updating anything. Okay, and also I can any API that you can any description that I want to specify something very specific to what we are maintaining, you can specify this here. Okay, this is used to get all the APIs. Okay, and if you hover over, notice that it actually does support Markdown format, so that will get rendered in the overview. So I can include Markdown like this, for example, overview. Okay, notes, run this. Okay, and go ahead and save it. When you save it, notice that it changed, and here there should be a new item that was added to the Explorer called custom, and it created a folder structure that you mentioned while editing this particular API. So editing custom, general, read, and the list APIs. So going forward, anytime you make a change, the change will be saved automatically. For example, let's say we specify S objects. Okay, it was just the version. We specify the S object and run it. So it will return the S object, the list of S objects, not the full detailed information. Now, if I close this and come back, open this, you see that the response, what we got it, as well as the path, the changes that we made, is saved. So all the APIs, so the saved APIs, except that the standard APIs, the changes will be saved as you make them. Okay, so there is nothing to do that. That save happens after you execute it, not before you execute. So however, let's say I made a change, but I didn't execute it. For example, let's say account. Okay, so now I go ahead and close this. If I come back, the change is not there. So if you want to save anytime, you can also click on this more actions menu, click on save. So you can actually explicitly save the request, even so that will get saved, even if the request is not actually made call out. And the next time you go back there, the change will be available. So any time it saves the request, it includes the response as well, the response body. For example, I made a call. Okay, so here, and then we close this and come back. You can see that the contact is there, and if you go back and check this one, the response, it's really the contact response. So there's a last response that we received or that we got as part of this API. And also the time got updated. So whenever that particular API request was saved. Okay. You can, once you create an API, for example, if you want to create a copy of it, you can go here, click on Save As. So it will create a copy of this particular request. So it can, and when you're creating a folder, it will again default to the custom, but you can choose this drop down menu and then it will show all the available APIs. Let's say call this as update API. Okay, so it will show all the available folder segments, and you can just choose one of them or make any further changes. Okay, so and when you make a change, you notice that under general, it created a new folder, and then it adds that particular API. Okay, so and then we have a couple of other options here. For example, let's say if you want to edit this API, I made a change. I want to remove the copy and say update APIs. I can go and make a change it. Okay, I can change that particular API. If I want to delete, I can go and delete that API. Okay, so keep in mind that there is no undo feature. So once you delete it, it is actually gone. So But if you want to make sure that if you want that particular copy, keep a copy of that request response somewhere. Okay, so now that's gone. And then I can recall just the list APIs. Okay, the whatever the description that is specified actually shows up, as part of this the overview. So you can really make use of this uh, to document any kind of quirks or issues or anything that you may have against this particular API, right? So you really don't have to store somewhere else. Okay. So this is about the API collections, how to save API requests, how to recall them, and how to rearrange them, so on and so forth. So here you also notice that in the KPI collections, when you hover over, we do show some controls. So if you click on it, there are a couple of options for you to edit the data here from right here. Okay. So if it is a folder, you can delete them. Okay, all the folder. But if it is an individual API, you can edit that. You can specify the new values. Okay. Um, so the next step, we have API versions. So that works in the along with the API collections and saved API request. So before you go to the API versions, you notice that there's a star icon that shows up when we save the API. So he can go and actually star the API. So when you do that, and then they will show up as part of this particular drop down here. So if you have a favorite API, that you love or hate, you are testing that, you want to be able to recall that quickly. You can call this, you can favorite that particular API, and that will be you can recall that. So keep in mind that the favorites, they're always associated to the individual API. So if you go and rename them, this particular name will be changed as well. However, the API is independent. Let's say if once you recall an API, there is no saved, even though it was from the list API, but it is not associated with any saved API. That's why it shows a save icon. You need to save to be able to save this as a different API. But favorites, they are saved APIs. They're always associated with one of the saved APIs. You can also favorite standard APIs. So for example, if I go here, let's say I want to favorite this get job info or get all jobs, right? So that I can just run this, for example. Okay, there are no bulk jobs. I can favorite this API even though I didn't save it because it is a standard API. Then after that, I can go here, recall. Notice that if the folder is a little bit wider, it has a lot of segments, we trim that. So just to give an idea where that particular API coming from, but it may not show all the paths. So if you want to see that, you can go here, click on it, so that will recall the full API. Okay. That is about API favorites and how to recall them. And if you wanna unfavorite, you can just uncheck it. For example, if you go uncheck it. Now, if you go back here, that is gone. Similarly, you can unstart it. And then if you go back here, that is gone. Okay. So this is about API versions along with API collections in Brobench. Thank you.